Okay, this episode, how to get at your French window frame when the pane of glass went and try not to be the one who broke it like yours truly. A little front, forehand smash. It's a Santa Ana event going on here in SoCal, and that's the thing about French windows. They're called that because they swing out, right? So the mount point for that was, you can see there's the bottom. There we go. Right here. So they got their nice little brass fixtures and zip, swing out that way. Alright, so pane glass busted out. Great. Because the Santa Anas were banging it back and forth because it's difficult to, I've got screens on these, and to make a screen if it's already a custom built dimension-wise French window, I had to customize it. So there was no way to fabricate a spot for that brass latch to anchor on these little grommets that are built into the windowsill. So it's flipping and flopping back and forth. I just finally had it. Broke the pane of glass myself. Okay, not the best of moves. So take the frame out, obviously. But remember this. Here's the key thing. This is why I do this particular playlist. Like it says, or I say, GC. Not a GC, but with GC skills. When I made mistakes along the way, there's a lot of times I haven't never done this before, and this would be one of them. Alright, you see this nice little bevel going on in there, right? The decorative effect where the pane of glass was in. So some of the glass was still intact. So I come down here into the garage / workshop. Pay no attention to that Cobra Mustang over there. And start wham, 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 and with a hammer it wouldn't break. We're talking like with a boom, a good, that smoke privacy glass for your bathroom. It's thick stuff. I'm like, well, hell, I can't eat 4 good smacks it took to break it out. I finally got annoyed. Really started going after it. Well, that's a problem when, let's get in here close. You see, screwed that up, popped out these bevels, which is all part of that one piece of wood. So I'm sitting there thinking, alright, do I continue to pop these out? I could have to make a new section there. Lovely. Right? Okay. More to the point here, that's just what extra work I added for myself. I'm showing you guys that. Don't do that. Okay, what we're really after here is to see how this was put together. And so, at first I was thinking mortise and tenon, but that's not correct. So, pull it back this way, and you could say it's tongue and groove. But they kind of really went off on, in terms of the deepness of both, right? So no visible pegs. The thing about French windows is if your pane of glass does not match the dimensions that are on stock, say like a vis-a-vis Pella or Home Depot, chances are it may have been built on site and it's custom. Totally custom, especially a house like this that's got glass curtain walls, Alright, next step. I try to keep it talk to. I haven't done one of these in a while. I can be chit-chatty sometimes. Like I think it's OMSR. Alright, so I got it really thin, and I mean thin, 32nd inch or thinner, edge on this putty knife, which is already thin to begin with. This is my thinnest one. Alright, so let's just see, is it going to go in? And as you can see, it's all the way flush there. Why am I showing you that? Well, it's a good way to test, because you don't want to make the splits on this any bigger than what the jigsaw blade is. This thing's coming real handy for me. Yeah, I believe Stanley still makes stuff in America. Tools even, if you can imagine that. Good for them. Okay, still gonna be a little bit tricky though. Trying to stay off the light. Okay. I'm gonna take the putty knife. I'm just gonna start probing here and try to find out, ascertain, what kind of fasteners they used in here. And if it doesn't work on one edge, it starts to get difficult. It's kind of going in pretty far, but this way. So I'm trying to lean on this and counterbalance it. I'll do this at the same time. That one's going pretty deep, actually. Look at that. But remembering that, you know, again, I'm doing this kind of bass backwards. We're just trying to figure out where they're going to be, because the fasteners, there have to be fasteners, unless it was just glued together. That's always a possibility too. Again, you want to find out if these are standardized in terms of like the dimensions, the pane of glass dimension, because then they probably were used one of 3 different ways in terms of how the frame was put together. But I'm not finding pegs, I'm not feeling metal here. So the next thing you're going to need, if you find yourself in this situation, jigsaw with a metal cutting blade, just in case we run across a flush nail head. Okay, so mission failed, but also got a success out of it. Glad I showed you, the intro gives you options. This time around, I did what I was looking at as I was showing it to you guys. Because I once took a piece of, something framed, I'm not sure if it was another window frame that I broke, mum's the word, or just something else put together like that, and I used the wrong tool and too thick of a wood cutting blade. We'll get more on that later. A reciprocating saw, and it screwed it up. It just did not go back together worth a darn. But the interesting part is you can see, some semblance of the seam going on here. Clearly there's 3 pieces based on the tongue and groove TNG showing through. So it's almost like, this was rebuilt back in the 80s, remodeled. You can imagine there was a lot of good stiff available adhesive-wise. It was not environmentally friendly. So I'm thinking it used some industrial grade strength adhesive that sort of had a petrification effect over time, or intentionally right away on the wood, because you can't, that wood grain of 3 different pieces there is fused together for the most part, and the metal cutting blade was bouncing off that area. That's why I had to go with plan B. And metal cutting blades don't bounce off anything. They'll cut through metal. And the thickest of metal. Take a break off an arm because it will heat up, sure. Anyway. So, just a reminder why you want to go with a metal cutting blade in this type deal. You have to remember to account for the teeth. Right, they're flared out, every other one. Now a nice fine toothed metal cutting blade is almost as thin as the back side. It's easy to forget that sometimes. The reason I do this playlist is, yes, GC skills, but not a GC. Took me 8 years getting all the right tools and tons of home improvement projects around here. It could be a problem if you have a house that was tricked out in the 80s, and there you could tell. Some days there was a lot of good coat going on, and other days it was a Debbie Downer. It's the only house I know of where there's 2 and 3 stories built entirely around a garage with 2 steel I-beams. One there, one over here. It's like a mothership hangar bay in here. Probably the architect was all hopped up on coke when he thought of this place. There's all kinds of problems that have come up since. Cool to look at, but a lot of upkeep. Anywho, you can see on the Ripper style blade, which cuts through wood pretty quickly, you can forget when we don't do this stuff 8 hours a day. And you may forget that little pointer you remembered or learned from the last project you did. That's almost like another 1/3 of the width to the blade on a hole, because the teeth are flared out so much, right? So stick with that metal cutting. Alright, I thought maybe I should throw this in, because you guys are going to want to go this route like what I'm doing. I'm taking the winch way out, because it's just easier to work with as a stopgap measure. I'm using a piece of plexiglass. Cost effective, cheap, easy to cut. You can get it done at your hardware store as long as you give them the right dimensions. They got it down pretty good. I had to cut one side a little bit more to make it square, but because I'm not going to use any sort of adhesive, any caulk or anything like that, because again, this is not the glass, I got to rely on a nice tight compressional fit. I don't know if you can see that original line here, but I'm lining it up, to the bevel, the very edge there, so that it'll press against each side without flexing, and you can see that line is starting to go off from the outer edge, which tells you, this piece is not quite square. I got to redraw that. Remember that. because if you're not going to use adhesive, clearly this is not a security threat. It's up on a 3rd-story window actually, but it's a dust getting the room filthy threat for sure. So that's why I'm going this route. Alright, last little prepping point reminder showing you this little flare out cuts that I made. Because you're working with acrylic, which is, you know, kind of plastic. It heats up, you know, and you want a freehand cut like this with a jigsaw. So they're kind of tricky to climb down and stay straight with. You know, you're going down a long line here, and this is the most important cut. It has to be square to the other side here, so that this fits in that groove, nice and tight. So I don't have to deal with a whole bunch of goopy mess when I take it out later, you know, through caulk and all that. So you got to take these little side cuts, because otherwise what happens is the acrylic starts to goop up, and from the heat of your jigsaw blade, it starts to fuse back together. Then you got to sit there and freehand cut it. It's sort of like sanding the edges off. But this way you'll avoid, because the blade will heat up, and you want to be able to keep going and not stop in the middle of this. Okay, so final verdict. Putting the video together, or putting this together, was done in July. It is now the end of December, going through that heavy rainstorm. And I just thought I'd show you. Yes, it's understood. The last little piece I did, other than this one, and this one's taking place of that, was like way too wordy and too long. So it's understood not going to be able to paint that frame because there's another element to this. Here's my custom frame, or screen rather, that I was telling you about. Alright. Here's that plexiglass. Not a whole lot of flex to the plexiglass. Okay? Kicking ass. The grommets I was telling you about on the frame and whatnot. So this thing is, there's a little vibration to it, but it's worked because it's already 20 degrees colder now that I've opened this up. Now here's the privacy glass. No vibration, obviously. Well, that's because it fits the groove. But I mean, clearly you could see, like I was mentioning, not a security threat, just keeping the home air conditioning, be it heat or air, what time of year it may be, working, or workable, manageable rather. Alright, until next time, don't be afraid of them home improvement products.